And welcome to Impact 2024, our continuing conversation where we talk about everything from race, religion, current events, all types of topics. And this is our safe place to have continuing conversation, an ongoing conversation, and where you can get your opinions out and we can talk through the issues of the day. As always, we encourage people to type your questions and your comments into the comment section so that you can be a part of the conversation, so that you can add your 2 cents, so that we can listen to the things or read the things that you have to say and be a part of the conversation and continue it on. Again, this is that safe place because as we all know, nowadays you're not always allowed to put your opinions out there, and you're not allowed to sometimes flush through and think through topics without incurring some significant criticism or backlash. In this space, you have the opportunity to do that. And so we encourage that you type your questions and your comments into the comment section. Today, what we're going to talk about is we're talking about a very current event, a current event that just occurred today. And let me tee it up for you first, and then we'll kind of go into it. And this one is a interesting one, not a happy one, but an interesting one. If you remember back in 2001 in November, there was a school shooting. I say that, and then you think, well, there's school shootings all the time. Unfortunately, that is our reality here in the United States. There was a school shooting where there was a young man who went into the school and shot four people and killed them. 17-year-old, two 17-year-olds, a 16-year-old, and a 14-year-old. And the boy who went in and shot these students was 15. It was a young man who got in trouble at school, and on that particular day that he actually had the school shooting, he was pulled into the office and was encouraged, or his parents were encouraged to take him home from school. Because they said he had been making some threats, and he had some disturbing images that he drew up and went on. And so, what is fast forward to now? The young man who did the shooting and murdered people, his parents were on trial, and so for one of the first times in as the news outlets say, one of the first times in history, a parent was put up on charges based on the fact that their child committed a mass shooting. And the parent in question, this one was the mother. And so the parents had brought this young man a gun. And he used the gun that they brought him, the gun that they purchased for him as a gift, to commit these murders. Not only that, the parents purchased him the gun after the school had initially told them that he was having some threats and some troubles. And so they went through the trial. They heard plenty of information. And I'm as I often do, I'm not putting out their names because I just don't want to give people, all of that, publicity or whatever we want to call it. But if you want to look at the story, you can look at the story because it happened in Michigan, and and it's pretty much current events. So you can Google it, and if you really want to get into the details. But what has happened here was that a jury came back after deliberating for multiple hours, a lot of hours, actually 11, and they came back with a guilty verdict. And so the mother was guilty of manslaughter on the four counts of manslaughter for each of the four people who were killed. And it was because, as they said, she was reckless. One, you have a duty if you're going to give somebody, again, 15-year-old, a weapon, that you have a duty to be the caretaker of the 15-year-old and the weapon. And so if they go out here and do something with a weapon that you purchased, that you were kind of enabling them, and you have a responsibility to the weapon that you're giving this minor. Also, because of the red flags and the communication back and forth with the school, there was a duty to address this young man's mental health, which they ignored, even though there were not just signs, but people actually discussing it with the family and saying that you need to address this, you need to do this, you need to do that, and they decided to do nothing. And so not only did they do nothing, they did nothing and then turned around after knowing that this young man had made threats, gave him a weapon so that he could go through with his threats. Why is this kind of like a topic? One, because it's the first time. And so now it's going to open up people in the future, parents in the future, to responsibilities for when it comes to criminal action, when it comes to deaths. So, for example, here in Virginia, where we're at, we had a little kid, a 6-year-old boy, went into the school and shot his teacher. Unfortunately, the teacher did not die, but he went into the school. He took his mother's gun and shot the teacher. In the past, yeah, we kind of look at the mother and say, oh, well, there's some responsibility there, and you could be sued. But now, based on what's going on here and the conviction here, criminal charges and significant criminal charges, because manslaughter charges are not a slap on the wrist, that she's going to do jail time. And because it's 4 counts, she may do significant jail time. And now parents will be responsible for the actions that their children take when it comes to these mass murders. And when we're talking children, we're talking under 18, just to be clear. So, when we're talking about adults going out here and doing mass murders, we're not talking about the parents at that point in the stage. And so that comes to the question in the comment piece of the law now says that you have a responsibility to your children in the actions that they do. Now, we have to think as people, is that the right thing? Should you be responsible for if your child does something horrific? Should you be responsible for if your child does something horrific and you appear to be kind of an enabler? There's a difference between your child doing something horrific, and in this particular sense, they brought him the gun. They ignored what the school was suggesting, and when their school was saying, and the counselors at the school were saying, there is a mental health crisis here. They intentionally ignored those things, and so enabling there. But how far does it go? If your child says to you, or a young person says to you, hey, I'm really mad at these people at school, and you just be like, get over it. And then they go and they do something terrible. Should you be held liable? Or is it a situation when you enable them with a weapon? When you open it up to, hey, I'm letting my kids have a weapon or having access to a weapon in the house. You have gun right activists who get all over the place, and they want everybody to have guns. They want little kids to have guns. They want everybody to have guns and gun safety. But then they, at the same time, they don't want, some of them don't want to take on the responsibility of having to have some accountability when something goes wrong with the weapon or with the gun. And so now it's being opened up. And so is that right? Is that right? Is that where we should be, where parents should be responsible for the actions of their children? Should parents be responsible for the actions of their children in what type of fashion? Is it, when we look into this particular case with the woman, where it was just egregious, or just all the time? Because there's a lot of altercations with kids, with minors, doing terrible things. And does it only stop at when it comes to murder, which was in this case, or does it go as well as, if your child is out here stealing? As a parent, are you responsible? Should you be held criminally responsible? If you know that your child is stealing, or you see that your child has all of this new stuff, and you didn't buy it for the child, should you be held criminally responsible, criminally negligent, because you're not paying attention to what's going on, or you're not being proactive in what's going on? And so that's the new world that we're living in, because again, this is the first time this has happened. And so, we really have to think about that. If you provoke your child, if you're the one that's kind of, pushing them on. So sometimes you hear stories about parents who want their children to take care of their younger children. And so the parent will come in, and you hear stories like this where you have two children, and one of the children will get bullied or beat up, and the parent will take the older child or the other child and punish them because they didn't protect their sibling. And as a result, sometimes there's an overreaction to where siblings think they need to protect their other siblings because parents have told them, you need to protect your sibling, you need to protect your sibling. And so as one sibling gets beat up, then the other sibling comes in and starts fights at school or does other things at school, or even, takes it a step further, may bring a weapon to school in order to protect their siblings. And so technically the parent pushed, encouraged their child to go down a bad path and to do the wrong things. At that point, is the parent, negligent? Is the parent responsible? Is the parent criminally liable if something bad happens? We get into that weird space, and that's the new space that we are now in. And so, as people, whether you have children or not, because this is not a parent discussion, this is a society discussion. Is, do we think that parents should be responsible for the actions of their children? The law, as of now, says yes. And so it's a new day. It's a new day. And so before you go out here and you purchase your child a gun, whether it be a real weapon or it be one of those red rifles, which is still a real weapon, do you have to think about what's your legal responsibility and what will happen to you if something happens to others? We have a comment. And it says, if a child kills others in a car accident while driving intoxicated and the parent purchased the car, are the parents liable? That's a very good one. That's a very good one. Because where's the line drawn? All right, I brought my kid a car and the kid went out here and they did something ridiculous. Now is it my fault? And that can go anywhere down the line. That can go anywhere down the line, from the car to a bike to just anything. At what point are you responsible? And so, buying your kid a car, you're responsible every time they have car accidents, and that they have plenty of accidents. But I would dare say, in order to kind of match where we were at, we have to just take that one step further. Would be, you brought them the car and you brought them the alcohol. And so I think that's where we're at with kind of more so on this line. I think it has to be a combination of things, because the concern is here, and the concern I had when I looked at this is very simple, and it is, if you choose not to pay attention to your children, if you choose, if the school or somebody says, look, that there's a mental health issue, and you choose to turn a blind eye, if you then know that somebody is in a mental health crisis or having a mental issue, and then you put gasoline on the fire, as they say, and then give them weapons. If they've made threats and then you turn around and give them weapons, I think that's super egregious. And I think that there's a clear line there. But I think in society, we have to be responsible enough to know the difference between something as what was stated in the comment. If you give your child a car and they're intoxicated, versus I intentionally ignored the advice of professionals and then gave my child a weapon who is talking about harming other people. I think as society, we have to make sure that we draw that line, because we know what happens out here. We know that then people take advantage of the system and then they get petty. And so, what will happen is somebody will go into a car accident, just like, and I'll bring the comment back up. We'll have a car accident, and then the next thing you know, people will want to get them criminally charged. And I think as society, we have to hold that line of responsibility and know the difference between something where it just is ridiculously egregious and it's just a part of parenting. Because there are no perfect people, no perfect parents, definitely no perfect kids. And so when we put all of that together, I think, most of the time we have to realize that, and even with the school shootings, most of the school shootings, it's nothing the parent could have done. It's not a responsibility that the parent would have had. And I think it's, now that we're in this new space, I think as people in that society, we have to realize the difference between something that is going to be you're just being irresponsible, and you just are missing, you miss something, or your child just did something out of character, or your child just did something. And that's going to be a tough space. That's going to be a tough space to be. That's going to be a tough space to be. So then, as we talk to one another, as a church, or we talk to one another as just parents, or we talk to one another as mentors to parents, and or just the community, as we talk to one another, you forget the courts. What do we say to other people? What is our responsibility? What is your responsibility? Because on the flip side, if your child does something horrible and you're sitting here blaming yourself, if your child does something horrible and now you have put yourself in an area of depression, or you feel like you're a failure as a person because your child did something horrible, what is the response? Because normally the response used to be, you did the best you could, if that's true, you did the best you could. And, a parent cannot, you can guide them in the way that they can go, but you can't make them do what they're supposed to do. That kind of was the comment. If your child goes to jail, that's not a failure upon you necessarily. That is, they chose the path which they chose. That is what we used to say. Is that now still going to continue to be the comments that we make to people when we're trying to uplift them and keep them together? Or is it now, look, man, your child messed up, you suck. Like, you're criminally responsible. You should be criminally responsible. We should throw you in jail just like them. Where is the line? And how do we react as people? I'll say you can't be responsible, or you shouldn't feel responsible if you've done your job as far as, telling people what the difference is between right and wrong, and telling people what they should do or shouldn't do, and helping them out. And if they decide to go down a path, or if they make some bad choices, or if they get into a situation where they make a mistake, that's not necessarily your fault. And you definitely shouldn't beat yourself up about it. How many of us, know someone who has children who are in jail? And what are you going to sit around and just be like, well, I'm a failure as a person because my child went to jail? Or, maybe they made some bad choices. Another comment. Most parents find it difficult to accept criticism about their children. Your child is threatening others. Well, what did they do to my child to make them feel that way? Yeah, and that's a whole nother path of where we are. One, yeah, it's already hard enough with the criticism about people to accept criticism of their child. But we're also in the new stage, or a different stage, where people don't want anybody to help them with raising their child, as if somehow if somebody says something to you or says something to your child, that's offensive to you or an assault on you. It used to be that we all raise children. Not to go on the cliche of the village, but it used to be, yes, you don't just parent your child, you parent the next one as well. You're parenting everybody in the neighborhood, because we all need to, you can't watch your child 24/7. But the next person can see him, and the next person can see him, and they should be able to say something to him based on the difference between right and wrong. I think what's problematic is that we have gone down this path. It's already difficult enough, I think, for parents to accept some criticism sometimes, because they take it on themselves, as if you're calling me a bad parent. But with the way the society has gone, and some of these, I'm blame it on younger people, well, my generation and younger, where we sit back and we say, nah, don't talk to my kid. I got this by myself. And I do think that that's a symptom of, a lot of us, there are a lot of single parents. And one of the things that we wanted to do as a group is to encourage single parents and say things like, you got it, you're good, you're sufficient by yourself, and you don't have to feel less than because you're a single parent. Well, unfortunately, I think we said it a little too much, and maybe in the wrong manner, and you're making people think that, yeah, you got this all by yourself, and you're sufficient all by yourself. But at the end of the day, you're not. If you are a man raising a daughter, at the end of the day, you're not sufficient by yourself. You need some assistance. If you're a man raising a man, you're not good by yourself. You still need some assistance. And it's not a gender thing. And that's why the reason I said it like that. And so if you're a single mom and you're raising a son or you're raising a daughter, at the end of the day, you're not sufficient to do it by yourself. You need help from other family members, from whoever's going to be at their school, teachers, all of this kind of stuff. You need to be able to work together with this, because you don't see everything that they're doing, and you don't know everything that's going on. It's like even the parents who deny. Fortunately, this is less of a thing, but parents used to, you're just in denial of issues. None of us want to hear that our child has any kind of an issue or any kind of a problem. And then when people come and they tell you, or they say, well, look, I see some signs of such and such or such and such. We all want to just look away and be like, nah, that ain't what it is. They all right. They're good. They're good. A lot of us are in denial of stuff, but you can't recognize it because you're not trained for certain things. We have to be able to open up ourselves and listen to others. And I think that's a part of the problem. And so that may be the one part that may be good from this, really good from this, is that your stubbornness, our stubbornness, and I include myself as well, our stubbornness can now get us in trouble. If we are our denial and sitting back saying everything's all good and all rosy can now get us in trouble, some significant trouble, in legal trouble. And you may, for most of us, you sit back and you may not necessarily think that's going to be a big deal, but to especially parents who may have more than one child, you can't afford to get in trouble with you can't afford to ignore things and get in trouble, and then you got other kids that you need to raise as well. And so I think that if anything is to be learned out of this, it is to be that you need to listen to others. We all need to listen to others. We all need help when it comes to anything. And this is not just parents. We all need to be able to be open enough and confident enough that we're able to listen, that we're not perfect, that we're not the greatest thing ever. And it doesn't make you any less of a person to take on some advice or criticism, but advice. And so, yeah, that's where we are. That's the topic that I wanted to bring up today, and kind of just put it out there for people to even think about, for people to kind of wrestle with and kind of understand, like, all right, we're in a new world now. Same old world, but new rules. And then now parents, you will get in trouble if your child goes out here and does something very bad, and you either ignored or helped your child do those things. And so, since we know that that's the new world, we need to just be opened up a little bit more to the advice of others. Maybe we need to go back to not being so self-absorbed and selfish in our own thing, thinking that we got it, that we can raise all of our kids by ourselves and we don't need anybody's help. And open ourselves back up to, hey, maybe you need to listen to some other people. Not all the criticism, and we know that there's a lot of people who want to criticize, and they just want to criticize. But some of that criticism is valid, and I think, some of those comments are things that we need to think about. And so it's not easy to know the difference between what's criticism and what's actually, a statement that may be something for you to consider that can help you out. In church, raising children is the responsibility of the community. Notice when Joseph, Mary, and Jesus traveled home after leaving the temple, Jesus traveled with family and friends. Yeah. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that we need to get back to. We listen to the advice or look at the example, always in the Bible and of the past of what we used to do in different communities. how we used to be more community oriented when it came to our kids. And so, yes, in the church, we need to understand, especially in the church, we understand that that is a community effort of raising kids, and I think that makes things better and safer. I don't know the people that in the mother and father that were in this particular example that I gave, but I would dare say I would have a hard time believing that they were a part of a church and that their child was a part of the church as well. Not because the event just wouldn't have happened, or the child wouldn't have had the same type of issues, or all of a sudden, but I would believe that if you were a part of a church and part of a community, that other people would have been able to say something to you and talk to you, give some more tidbits, and there would have been just more opportunities for mediation or more opportunities for for something to block before this type of incident will go on. It's going to be hard for me to imagine that you're a part of a church and people are, and your kid is making threats to folk, and the rest of the church members will be like, what's a great idea? Somebody who's making threats, let's buy him a gun. That's smart. It's hard for me to think that that's what the church community would be able to would be advocating for. It's hard for me to think that if the young man was a part of a youth group and got encouragement from other people, that he would have been able to do the exact same things, or that somebody wouldn't have been able to raise some red flags a little bit earlier to some other safety measures, some authorities, or some other things like that. It's just hard for me to imagine that these things happen as much when the more community you have. I think the more likely you can help in these situations. Doesn't mean it's going to stop it, because there's plenty of people who do things who are connected to all of these folk. But I just think that sometimes we need to make sure that we're a part of a church family and that we raise our children in community, as was said in the comment. All right. Well, that's it for today. I thank everyone for the comments that came in. I know this is not a great thing a great topic to really kind of go into, because it's at the end of the day, it's a tragedy all around. You can't bring those lives back that were lost, and now you have another life that's going to be altered significantly because, again, this woman is going to do some time. And as much as it may please others, at the end of the day, it doesn't solve anything or help anything unless it somehow reminds some parents that, hey, maybe I need to be a little bit more vigilant. And I'm gonna say this, and I know people, they're gonna take it however you want to take it. Look, just buying our kids gun things, and you think that's cool, that's not cool. If you want to buy your child a weapon, it should, at the end of the day, it's not their weapon. It's 100% your responsibility, and that child should not have access to it unless you are there, and unless you have unlocked it, unless you have put it in their hands and are with them. Point blank, period. As much as people want to have gun rights, it's ridiculous, and it's unnecessary to just be having guns around for kids. And that's anybody under the age of 18. If they live in your house, they don't need to have access to a gun, especially that one that you gave to them. You need to be responsible for that. All right. As always, thank you for the comments, and thank you for coming in. As well, as a reminder, every Tuesday, right before here at 7 o'clock Eastern time, we have prayer. Thursday at 7 o'clock Eastern time, same place, we have our Bible study, Thursday Thirst. And on Sundays at 10 o'clock Eastern time, we have worship service. Please join us, YouTube, Facebook, and in person if you can. And as always, at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Tuesdays, we have Impact 2024. Thank you for joining us, and join us again next week. Have a good one.